Welcome to History Love, where we explore the stories, people, and events that shaped our world. Let's dive into the past and uncover history's most fascinating moments. The Battle of Coleto Creek, a tragic stand in the Texas Revolution. The morning mist clung to the ground like a ghostly veil as Colonel James W. Fannin Jr. and his men prepared to leave the stone-walled sanctuary of Fort Defiance. The weight of indecision had plagued Fannin for days. Orders had come to retreat, yet he hesitated, unwilling to abandon those still fighting for Texas freedom. But now, on March 19, 1836, time had run out. The Mexican army was closing in. A fortified gamble. Fort Defiance, formerly known as La Bahia, had been a stronghold, a beacon of defiance against Mexico's rule. Fannin and his 420 Texan soldiers had worked tirelessly to strengthen its defenses, but with the fall of the Alamo and the crushing defeats at San Patricio and Agua Dulce, its strategic value had faded. As Fannin finally ordered the retreat, his men loaded 9 brass artillery pieces and over 1,000 muskets onto wagons. Yet in a fateful oversight they left behind precious food and water, supplies that could have meant the difference between survival and doom. As they set fire to the remnants of their provisions, the smoke spiraled into the sky, a signal to the enemy that their quarry was on the move. General José de Urrea, a relentless and disciplined commander, wasted no time. The hunt had begun. A fatal delay. The Texans had a 2-hour head start, but the journey was slow. Their oxen, burdened by the weight of artillery and supplies, struggled through the rugged terrain. The men were weary, their boots caked in mud. When they reached Menahuila Creek, Fannin made a fateful decision. He allowed his men to unhook the oxen to graze. His officers protested, urging him to press on to the safety of the Coleto Creek timberline, but Fannin was resolute. The oxen needed rest and so did his men. That hour of vulnerability was all Urrea needed. By the time the Texans resumed their march, the thunder of hooves echoed behind them. The Mexican cavalry was upon them. The battle begins. With no cover in sight, Fannin ordered his men into a defensive square formation. The Texans, 3 lines deep, crouched behind a makeshift barricade of wagons and supplies. Their artillery was positioned at each corner, loaded and primed. They would not go down without a fight. Urrea's forces encircled them. The grenadiers advanced first, rifles raised, while cavalry flanked the rear. The Texans held their fire until the enemy was within range. Then, with a deafening roar, they unleashed a devastating volley. Smoke choked the battlefield as cannon fire ripped through the Mexican ranks. Bodies fell. The charge wavered, but Urrea was undeterred. Again he sent his men forward, this time with bayonets glinting in the sunlight. Bullets found their marks. Fannin was hit in the thigh, his blood soaking into the dust. His men fought bravely, their muskets primed and reloaded in rapid succession. But as night fell, their situation grew dire. Mexican snipers picked off cannoneers one by one. Water ran low and the wounded groaned in agony. The Texans' cannons, once their greatest advantage, had become useless without men to fire them. The last stand. By dawn, Urrea's reinforcements had arrived. Nearly 1,000 Mexican soldiers surrounded the dwindling Texan force. Artillery was brought up, and the first shells exploded within the defensive square. The ground trembled. The Texans, exhausted and outnumbered, faced a grim reality. Fannin called his officers together. Some wanted to make a desperate dash for the trees. Others insisted on fighting to the last man. But the wounded lay all around them, men too broken to run, too weak to hold their rifles. With heavy hearts they made their decision. A white flag was raised. The Texans believed they had surrendered under honorable terms, expecting to be treated as prisoners of war. But Urrea's orders came from a man with no mercy. General Santa Anna had decreed that all captured rebels were to be executed. The Texan soldiers, weary yet hopeful, were led back to Goliad. They had no idea of the fate that awaited them. The Goliad Massacre. 1 week later, on Palm Sunday, the deception was complete. The Texans were divided into 3 groups, told they were to be released. Instead, they were marched out to separate locations and ordered to turn their backs. The crack of gunfire shattered the morning air. The ground was soon littered with bodies. Some tried to run. Smoke and chaos filled the fields as a few managed to escape into the woods or across the San Antonio River. But most fell where they stood. In the courtyard of the chapel at Fort Defiance, Fannin awaited his fate. He asked for 3 final wishes: not to be shot in the face, to be given a Christian burial, and for his personal belongings to be sent to his family. His captors agreed to all 3. They honored none. The executioners fired point-blank into Fannin's face. His body, along with those of over 340 other Texan prisoners, was burned in a mass pyre. For weeks, the charred remains lay exposed to the elements, a grim testament to the cost of defiance. But from the ashes of Goliad, Texas resolve was forged. The massacre became a rallying cry, "Remember Goliad." A battle cry that, alongside "Remember the Alamo," would fuel the Texan fight for independence. And within a month, at the Battle of San Jacinto, Sam Houston would lead his forces to a stunning victory, ensuring that those who perished at Coleto Creek did not die in vain. Their sacrifice would be remembered for generations to come. Thanks for joining us on this journey through history. If you love this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to History Love. Together, let's keep the love for history alive. See you in the next chapter.